And thank you very much. Yes, I think you go see Larry and get your John Hancock, make it official.
Next, I'll be sworn in.
Okay.
And you can break it up a little more for me, that'd be great.
One word at a time.
I.
Raise your right hand, sir. Thank you very much. And repeat after me. I, Brian Smith,
I, Brian Smith,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of mayor
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of mayor
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Yeah, sorry. I guess
And then Larry, who's next?
Connie?
Connie.
All right.
Whoa.
Okay. Brian, I'll let you do the photo op. Since I took your picture, you
Very
can.
nice. You want the same angle?
This is actually, whatever works good.
Come over here.
Okay.
Oh, you wanna go? I'll switch this side. Come on. You want it this way?
No.
Oh, stay where I am.
Glasses for this.
Sorry.
You didn't know how. Okay.
All right, Connie. Raise your right hand. I, Constance Keough,
I, Constance Keough,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
the Constitution of the
faithfully discharge the duties of the office of village trustee
I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of village trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
There you will. Thank you, Connie. Thank you. Here you go, Connie. You gotta go sign this one. Oh.
So refreshing to see people swearing to uphold the Constitution.
Feeling is. All right. Raise your right hand, please. I, Janice Silverberg,
I, Janice Silverberg,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester,
State of New York,
State of New York,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of village trustee
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of village trustee.
according to
My ability.
Congratulations. That's for you. All right,
Thank you, Village Justice, Delvin Lyons.
thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Be here, please. See?
All set?
Thank you.
So next, I will be reappointing Connie Keough as my deputy mayor for the third time.
Something like that.
Welcome back. Next is the resolution to set the schedule for the regular village board meetings. I'm just going to read these. Resolved to hold the regular village board meetings on the first and third Mondays of each month of the calendar year, except in July, August, and September, during which months the board will meet on the third Monday. Additionally, the board will hold work sessions on the Wednesday preceding the third Monday each month. Regular meetings and work sessions begin at 7 p.m. All meetings held in the Irvington Village Hall unless announced otherwise. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? The resolution to adopt an order of business for regularly scheduled village board meetings. Resolved to set the order of business for regularly scheduled village board meetings as follows. 1, call to order. 2, pledge of allegiance. 3, announcements. 4, correspondence. 5, public comment. 6, consent agenda. 7, public hearings. 8, new business. 9, old business. 10, reports of board, standing committees, and officers. 11, public comment. 12, review of action items. 13, adjournment. Make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Resolved to designate J.P. Morgan Chase, TD Bank, Webster Bank, and People's United Bank as official banks for the deposits of village funds. Brenda, any added? I think those all sound like the same ones as last time. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolved to designate the Gannett Journal News and the Rivertowns Enterprise as the official newspapers of the Village of Irvington. Also no change. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any ones that aren't time sensitive, we can use the enterprise, I prefer that. Resolution to designate an independent auditor, another non-change. Resolved to designate the firm of PKF O'Connor Davies of Harrison, New York, as official independent auditor for the Village of Irvington. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? On the purchasing policy, Brenda, do you want to
Sure, I can
quickly
tell
go
you
over the changes?
something. I don't have in front of me, it's to better reflect the practices that we're currently using in the office. And what it was is to make it clear when we're audited that certain things don't customarily get a purchase order. It would be things like refunds, it's certain attorney fees, certain utilities that we really aren't billing in advance, but they're budgeted in advance for. And then it was just to say that all credit card payments also need to have a purchase order.
Since I review all the bills, something like the attorney fees are a great example. They don't have a purchase order, but they have all the detail breakdown. So it's not like we're just paying whatever money it says. They're reviewed carefully.
They're reviewed carefully, exactly.
It doesn't make sense to have a purchase order on top of the bill.
It would be redundant paperwork to be doing things more than once. And the purchase for the reason we have a purchase order is that we have the funds, to show that we have the funds available before the expense is made.
Yep, and I think it also clarified that, the timing of it a little bit, which I think is common sense, but probably isn't the policy.
The other change that is even remotely substantive is raising the threshold for requiring a performance and payment bond on a construction job. It was originally $35,000, which is exceptionally low to have a performance or payment bond on a job. We're suggesting to raise it to $100,000, but keep in mind that it would be required. If there are circumstances, and we've had a couple just recently, where you have a low bid contractor that you're particularly concerned about, but you can't knock them out of the low bid spot, even if it's a $40,000 job, we'll insist on a performance bond. So it's,
Right, it's just
but to require it is
raise the
really,
floor, but
yeah, it's really unnecessary, and the expense that it adds is, you get very little value out of it, is the point.
Is that the kind of thing that you discuss with Brian, or if you would not
that would
necessarily?
be the board, typically.
If you
To
changed
what?
it.
To,
If we did it for something lower
Change-
than that. It's like the
changed it
firehouse
for-
contract.
yeah, we would present that to you as part of the bid award.
It'd be
Yeah.
it'd be the whole board.
I have a question also. I see that there was another, a new addition to the list of
That's correct.
the Han Engineering. Is that because of the amount of use?
Because we use them for regular planning board review, and because they're the posted escrows, that it seemed that they were on our list over 25,000 more often, but it wasn't like we were purchasing a vehicle or capital, it was really reimbursements.
It was an aggregation of a bunch of bills together, and so we did a competitive process with Han Engineering, and we've engaged them as our engineers. We use them routinely for planning board matters, so it's very much routine, and that's the point about
Making it.
making it routine, exactly.
Okay, just one other question. The purchasing policy summary grid on page 2, I just don't understand what the X's refer to.
That would indicate in which case you need those items. So you need a purchase order, then you need, I'm looking at the policy. Something not printed
Yeah, it
out?
doesn't have-
Yeah, I think
There's
there
no
might be-
header.
I think there should
Oh,
probably
I'm
be.
sorry.
Columns up at the top.
Yeah, it's the way it printed out,
Columns.
yeah.
It was just a printout, yeah. One is for when you need competitive bids, let's say a verbal, a written competitive bid, and when you have to go to a full-blown RFP.
Gotcha, okay.
So the last column would be like the full one.
Last would be the
Sealed bid.
sealed bid.
And
Thank
so the
you.
one
We'll
before that would be
correct
RFP.
Let's go through. The first one, Larry, would be the verbal,
The first one's a purchase order.
is purchase.
Yes, purchase order, then three verbal quotes, 3 written quotes, and then the last column is competitive bid.
Right.
So first column is purchase order, second column is 3 verbal quotes, third column is 3 written quotes, and the fourth column is sealed bid.
Thanks.
Sorry about that, that's just the way the formatting printed out, but we'll correct it for the resolution, of
Okay,
course.
thank you.
And one other one is that the threshold was $200 for a purchase order. We've increased that to $250.
Again, it doesn't mean there won't be supporting documentation, it just means that there wasn't a purchase order before the purchase. Right?
Right.
Any other questions? Resolved to approve the purchasing policy dated December 1st, 2017. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? The investment policy,
No change.
there's no changes, other than the date. Don't have any questions on these, but. Otherwise, resolved to approve the investment policy dated December 4th, 2017. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? The next is a resolution to set the date for the next organizational meeting, which is looking ahead. Resolved to set the date of the next organizational meeting as December 3rd, 2018. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Who knows where we'll be?
The next item is volunteer appointments. These are the annual, well, not all annual, but anyone who has the expiring term. There's actually only one change to this, where on the Green Policy Task Force, Petra Candace informed us that she will no longer be able to serve. There might be still a few that we're confirming with, is that right? Or we pretty much these are all confirming now?
Yeah, basically all confirmed. If there's any changes at this point forward, like say on the Green Policy Task Force or any of the other committees, we'll process them in the ordinary course. You know, you'll have it in front of you at the next meeting. But this is what we know about at this
Yeah,
point.
and I know like the FACE committee, for example, is still interviewing committee members, so we'll probably be adding those in the normal course of business, but this is what we have today. Otherwise, resolved to appoint the following volunteer committee members as detailed below. All in favor? Thank you to all those volunteers, and there's quite a few. Trustee liaison reports, or assignments, sorry. We hadn't really spoken about this much, but no one had emailed me that they wanted to change. So if everybody's happy with their current assignments, we can keep them that way. If someone wants to change, reach out to me. The only addition I was going to make was I was going to formally appoint Janice to the police department. I'll still be, a liaison as well, just to have a second person since you're already working with the court. We'll just have a second person, and I'll let the PBA know as well as the chief. So that's the only change I had, Larry.
Yep.
And no one was complaining, so I figured everyone was happy with their assignments. If anybody wants to switch, though, please let me know.
You know, something I was just realized back at the volunteer appointments, both the tree commission and the planning board are listed. Is there, am I missing something?
Because there's not
The
an
planning board is
expiring,
just- There's no expiring members, that's the planning board. On the tree commission not there because they are.
There were no terms that expired, right?
Okay.
We made those 20-year appointments.
But the planning board did have one. There should be, if the board is fully staffed, there should be one every year.
Yeah.
Because they have 5-year terms, and there's 5 members, so.
Yeah, I guess the tree commission is light. So,
Gotta get some rings.
yeah.
Is there, are the board liaisons to departments available on the village website somewhere?
I know.
Should people know?
I think when you hit a particular committee, it says liaison is, at least in some cases, like you go down on those little tabs and you come to like theater commission, and then it says the names and then liaison, but I don't know if that's true in all of them.
We could vote, they report on their committees at the end of the meetings if they have something to say, but there's no reason we don't
You can
post
put
it.
it there.
So people could reach out if they had questions.
Sure.
So could you, maybe you or Larry send our list around again, just so in case we've
Forgot.
forgotten
Just,
something?
hopefully there's not one board we haven't been,
Yeah, right, exactly.
sure. Checks over 25,000. We had one, which was 204,000 $232.66. That was the New York State CHIPS funding for the 27, or the money came from the CHIPS funding for the paving and work in the village this year. That was to ELQ. Correspondence, we have two. First is from Chief Tarracone. On Thursday, November 23rd, the Irvington Fire Company, and that was actually Thanksgiving Day. On Thursday, December 23rd, the Irvington Fire Department was dispatched to report a house fire in the Downingwood Complex. Under the command of First Assistant Chief Joe Trauma, Irvington firefighters, along with mutual aid from Dobbs Ferry, Tarrytown, Ardsley, Hastings, and Elmsford, quickly attacked and extinguished the fire. In addition to thanking our mutual aid departments, I would like to acknowledge and thank the following 16 members from Irvington who left their families and sacrificed Thanksgiving dinners to assist our neighbors in need. That was First Assistant Chief Joseph Trauma, Lieutenant Dan Billings, Lieutenant Andrew Lamberti, Lieutenant Patrick Colantuno, Ex-Chief James Ruffler, Ex-Chief Michael Colantuno, Ex-Chief Chris DePauli, Ex-Chief Jeff Ruffler, Ex-Chief Dan Ramondo, Firefighter Henry Trauma, Firefighter Max Trauma, Firefighter Matt Schaefer, Firefighter Kevin Gallagher, who's actually here tonight, Firefighter Louis Lambros, Firefighter Dennis Monterulli Jr., and Firefighter Frank Gilligan. I think we mentioned at the last meeting, but our Thanksgiving was very busy in the village of Irvington. It used to be the day of false alarms in the village because everyone would have their turkey on and not realize there was stuff in the bottom of the oven or whatever. This time we had a full working fire. I think there was another call, and then there was a serious accident. I don't know if we actually needed extrication, but I know the fire department was called as well, and that was about 11 o'clock at night. That was on the, and obviously the IVAC was called, and the police were busy as well. In addition to that, we had a major water main break down by Scenic Hudson Park, right, I guess it was around 11:30 or noon. So we had, I think, our full water department, which is 4 people. It's people from the DPW, as well as one of our contractors, Bucci, who got there, as I say, before noon, and they were there until at least 8 p.m. They made the initial repair in what was almost seemed too good to be true, and it turned out to be. They said it would take. They told me it'd be about 4 hours because I was talking to the restaurants down on Bridge Street, who had, I think, MP Taverna had 400 reservations and Red Hat had 500 reservations. So we knew we were, you know, it was a big issue. So we told them it'd be 4 hours. We got it back on in an hour and a half. It was on for about 15 minutes, and it broke on another piece of the pipe. So it was a disaster for the restaurants, the families that were impacted by our water and DPW and Bucci, as well as our volunteer fire and ambulance, and the police obviously that worked as well. So it was a day that I was very thankful for all of our volunteers and our employees. I know I'm glad Anthony wrote this. We did also contact, you know, all the departments that came for mutual aid that day as well. But you know, it's something to be thankful for as we go through the holiday season, that we're very lucky to still have a volunteer fire department in particular. Next, correspondence from Cheryl Brandon. I don't know if you wanted to talk later, or I can read it. It's not a very long letter, so.
Can I just?
Sure.
For a second? Cheryl Bramwine, 85 South Buckhout Street. I don't want to detract from the substantive issues. I just had a procedural question regarding the basic democratic principle of notice and opportunity to be heard. I feel like the agenda coming out at 11:30 on Friday morning and the deadline for submission of letters from the public being noon on Friday seemed inherently unfair. So I was hoping that we could do better.
Sure. Well, we've been trying, and I think we've been pretty successful in getting the agenda out on Thursday by noon. And, you know, the problem is with this is the organizational meeting, so it's a 2-pager, and we had, you know.
Understood.
So.
I did a informal survey of the neighboring villages, and no one really has a deadline for.
And that was another. Well, see, we had the problem with that is people would send it at 5:30 on Monday, and we wouldn't be able to get it in. And then we'd have other people say, you know, when you sent the agenda out on Thursday or Friday, I didn't see that there was correspondence on the final agenda because we didn't get it, and they say I can't respond. So we actually thought we wanted to take a proactive step in saying we need the deadline to be Friday, so we actually get the packets over the weekend.
But don't you think it should be extended if the agenda is coming out at 11:30 on Friday?
I do, and in this case, we included your letter, so.
Okay, but there was a letter from my neighbor VK that came out before noon on Monday.
Well, we just got that today.
Right, but.
And I said I would read that into the,
Okay, thank you.
into the report. So we are we have a hard cutoff, but then we also can use our discretion if we want to. So it's more to get people to try to send it early, so we can, if we have to do research on them or something, we can get that in advance.
Understood. I just think it's something to look
Sure.
at.
And we have actually thought about it quite a bit, because again, we used to send it out on a Friday, and then we used to get letters, Monday morning are okay, but then when you get them at 6 o'clock or 6:30 right before the meeting, it just gets hard, because
Right.
when you have to cut off.
Well, that's inconsiderate, but hopefully they would get it in by noon and, give you an opportunity to look at it. But thank you.
Sure.
I'll save my comments for later.
Great segue. Any other public comment? Okay, we're through one page of the agenda already. Next up is the consent agenda. It's just had the minutes and the appointment of personnel in the recreation department. Any comments on these? So otherwise, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda, if I can get a second. All in favor? Aye. Now we will continue the public hearing and consider a local law modifying zoning of the RZM Hudson train station. Mary Ann, do you want to catch us up?
Where do you want me to go, say what the whole law's about?
Where we are.
Yeah, I think people should know pretty much by now what the law's about, but maybe the changes since the last time we met?
Yeah, well, there were only a couple changes since the last time. One was, it's, would be section 3 of the law where it says, for the RZF Hudson train station building, upon the granting of a special permit in accordance with 224-8F, which are the procedures for getting a special permit, and Hudson House had asked that G be added. G is the provision for revocation for non-payment of taxes. It's pretty unlikely, but put it in, it seems harmless, it doesn't really change anything. And then the other change was made to, this isn't numbered, this version. The fourth page in the section on outdoor seating, and there's all the conditions for giving a permit for outdoor seating, and it had said that the outdoor seating area must be located immediately adjacent to the west side of the train station building, which it still says, and can extend, it did say beyond the area leased to the tenant of the railroad building. And again, at the request of Hudson House, we changed it, may not extend beyond the boundaries of the railroad district. It's not really any change, it couldn't extend beyond there anyway, so.
Yep, so
Those are the changes over the last time. There was a request made to put a parking requirement for the limited service carryout restaurant, but if there's gonna be seating inside. And the board, of course, had discussed that a couple times before, and it's decided it didn't want one. And so it was requested again, but it wasn't added because the board had made it clear that they didn't want that requirement.
right, so if anyone's just tuning in for the first time, I think this is our fourth public hearing or so. We're looking to, Metro North fairly recently, and maybe now it's almost a year ago, leased the building. That is the RZM Hudson train station. And the...
Like 277 years ago.
Yeah, for several centuries, literally. And we're trying to, add some uses that someone can try to make a go of it and hopefully restore the building. It's become somewhat, run down recently. And, I think we all on the board, and I think most of the residents of Irvington, like the building, and it has a historic purpose, and we'd like it to be viable if we could. At the same time, it's in a residential neighborhood, other than the fact that there's a railroad station. So I think we were trying to find that balance of not changing the character of the neighborhood at the same time of letting the tenant have a viable, chance of a viable establishment there. So I think that, the perfect uses for us envisioned were people going onto the train and coming off the train. We can envision a lot of people driving down there from out of town and things like that. So I think we try to tailor our uses We've tweaked them back and forth. We've had a lot of dialogue with Hudson House, which is obviously the neighbors that are, right there, staring at the building, as well as Apollo, which is the Artsy Park Homeowners Association. We try to take into consideration a lot of their comments. I think we've taken into account most of them, and that's kind of where we are over a long period of time. We will, yeah, you guys have any comments, or we'll open up to the public?
I can hold any comments, we can have
Okay.
any public.
Sure, so public comment.
So is this the beginning of we've opened this?
It's still open.
It's still open because it was open, right?
We never closed.
We never closed it.
So first of all, thank you on behalf of Hudson House for a very thorough review process. Certainly appreciate your openness to all our comments and concerns. As was indicated, we had 3 comments and 2 of them were incorporated. Appreciate that. I guess the remaining question is on the parking for the restaurant, and I'm unclear as to why there would not be a standard set for parking on restaurants, especially in this area where there's clearly no ability to park anywhere else as there might be in the village for a restaurant. And when I look around other zoning ordinances, I generally see a standard established. I understand that the planning board will assess vehicular impact in the special permit process, but I don't see why a standard established as part of the zone would be detrimental to that assessment and might in fact be helpful.
Ron, let me just say
Sure.
one thing well, I said there isn't a parking requirement. It's not so many spaces per 4 tables or whatever. There is a parking requirement that to get the special permit, the planning board has to find that there's adequate off-street parking for the proposed use. So it's not like there's none at all. And I guess the thinking is, it depends what kind of if it's a restaurant that looks like it's encouraging people coming from other places, well, they might find, okay, we need a higher parking requirement. But if it looks like this is sort of service establishment where people will just grab coffee going to and from the train, probably don't need a parking requirement. So that's the thing. It's such a it depends so much on what kind of facility it is. So that's why the requirement is that there would be adequate off-street parking for the proposed use. It's a particular.
Yeah, and to me, that was
special
very
permit
clear. And to me, it's this is a unique building, it's a unique location, both because it is in a residential neighborhood, but it's also on a train station. It is a train station. So I think that our planning board, I think, did an excellent job, and I think that while empowering them to make that determination, I know the leasing also has to provide, I think, 14 spots as well. So it's also not a very big building. So if this was a 100,000 square foot building, I would be much more concerned than kind of the realities of it, and kind of that limiting factor with the fact that the planning board has the discretion to evaluate that. I didn't think we had to put an arbitrary number.
I think you could look at it the other way around as well, that it might not be a bad idea if the planning board had some standards, so it wouldn't be sort of free-for-all, but I can understand the logic, and certainly we can do this in the special permit process. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Any other public comment? What happens, you get up to speak, someone takes your spot. Anyone else on this? Anyone from the board have anything to say? I know we've talked about
We've
this.
discussed this so many times that I feel comfortable. We've done a great deal of review, and I'm happy with where we are.
Anyone else? I've been saying this to a lot of people, anyone who listens to me, that the contrast of this law versus the tax bill that was just passed in several hours is startling to me. And we're not going to take $100 trillion in debt, I promise. But
Many trillions of dollars.
yeah, if there's no other public comment, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
I think we're ready to vote. Whereas the adoption of the proposed local law modifying zoning near the Ardsley and Hudson train station is an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, and whereas the Board of Trustees has reviewed an environmental assessment form prepared in contemplation with the proposed local law adoption. And whereas the Board of Trustees finds that the proposed local law will not have any negative environmental impacts, therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees adopts a negative declaration pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act regarding the proposed local law, and further resolved to adopt a local law modifying zoning near the RZ on Hudson train station. I'll make a motion if I can get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, I would say that, all kidding aside, this really is the way I think a local law should be done, where, we got to work with the person who, requested the change. We got to work with those most impacted. We got to work with the public, and we didn't rush through it. So I think we have a better law than we would have had, maybe not a month ago, but, 6 months ago. And I thank Hudson House and Apollo for their input throughout the process. Thank you.
And Mr. DeGennaro for
Yes.
coming many times.
Yes. Next,
Okay, done.
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing to consider a local law regarding mechanical rock excavation.
Second.
All in favor? Sorry.
This is rocket.
Yeah, did you want to give the back? This is the first time for this one.
It looks really long, it is long, it's 10 pages, but the first 6.5 pages are just moving the blasting law. So we're gonna have a new chapter called, blasting and mechanical rock excavation. Right now, the blasting requirements are in the fire section, they're always kind of hard to find, so we'll have a new article. So the first 6.5 pages are just that, repeated, okay? Then the main provisions are on, the main changes are, I'm starting on page 7, and it's a separate article on mechanical rock excavation, and essentially the goal is to limit the amount of time that rock chipping can happen, okay? So the requirements are first that you have to get a permit from the building department, and in order to get it, the applicant has to, actually the property owner has to certify that the property owner has reasonably determined that any mechanical rock excavation can be completed within the period specified below, and that period is 38 days. Mechanical rock excavation should be restricted to 38 consecutive days, and that's whether excavation occurs or not. So Monday to a Saturday is 7 days, even though you could only excavate on 5 of those. And then to avoid them, coming in for another permit when they don't finish in 38 days, no additional rock excavation permit can be issued for the same property for 18 months after the previous one expired. And it says all mechanical rock excavation is subject to the time limitations that are in our noise code, and that's 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and no weekends and holidays. And you can't issue a permit unless there's a dust mitigation plan, and it goes through all what's got to be in the dust mitigation plan. They have to let the village know when they're starting, and have to let the police department know, and property owners within 200 feet have to be notified about the rock excavation, and signs have to go put up where it's gonna occur. And then the other limitations are that no person performing mechanical rock removal shall have more than 2 machines and 2 hammers operating on the same property at the same time, and rock crushing shall not be permitted. Unless the planning board determines that rock crushing on big parcels is better than hauling stuff on and off the site. And then there's also a 7-day waiver provision, so that if they really came in with good faith and couldn't do it in the 38 days, and then they couldn't do it, there could have been really severe weather circumstances or something, that it can apply to the village administrator for a waiver. And then it sets a penalty, which is quite high, $2,000, for each day, so.
So a little bit of background on this was, I say was it 2 years ago we passed the law? 18 months ago, something like that? Anyway, we had recently passed a law just for the I guess, eliminating on weekends. So you might say, well, how big a problem is this in Irvington? There doesn't seem there's that many rock ledges that people would be, jackhammering. The area up behind the high school, they've had construction up there for years now. And there's one site where they've had rock excavation going on for over 350 days, 370 days. And before we changed the law, it was 7 days. I guess it wasn't Sundays. It was 6 days a week. It was actually a little bit before when they should have started until they had to finish. So I had several. I live on Riverview, so I'm on the north side. People on the south side, and just a little bit up the road, basically came with pitchforks and torches to my house. And actually then I was like, geez, I didn't really hear because I was usually at work when it started. But on the weekends, on the Saturday, I remember I took from my house, which is far away, I took a video and showed it to the board, so we thought we'd try to do something to help our neighbors. So we took the first step, eliminating on the weekends, and then we said we wanted to look at this, because there still are more sites up there in particular, but there's other places in the village too, a handful. And a lot of this is based on RISE code, and they had a similar kind of issue where, I think the big thing that I was hoping to do is change a little behavior. Maybe you can not have a 10-foot basement in your $4 million home. Maybe you have to only have a half basement or something like that. You might change some behavior that I think is actually a beneficial thing rather than, jackhammering for over a year. Anyone else?
Let me point out, this isn't the latest version, there was a change made. It's just a small change. Right now it says rock crushing shall not be permitted on the subject properties, and it suggested an amendment that unless during site plan review, the planning board determines our properties of over 3 acres, then it makes more sense to put it on the site. So the last page is missing that language. So I did send it over, but I'll send it around. I'll send you the latest. Send the board the latest. It's just tiny. It's a tiny change. So it can be. I'll give you I don't have the exact language with me because I have what's in the packet, but I did send the more recent one around, and I'll send it around tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Anyone else on the board have comments on this one? This one, as you say, it's a long law, but it seems there's much more straightforward than 10 pages.
Yeah.
I recall when we passed the earlier version, we had reached out to some of the construction people, asked their opinions. Have we gotten any other feedback on this?
I don't think we haven't gotten any feedback. We haven't gotten feedback, positive or negative on this one. This was kind of the opposite of the RZ on Hudson train station. Any public comment on this? So Mary Ann, do you think that change is big enough, or do you think we should wait, or do you think we're okay to proceed?
Oh, were you going to vote on it tonight? Oh,
It's
God.
up to you. It's your call.
Yeah, I just wish I had the exact language with me, and it's probably,
We can hold it over too. I mean, it's,
Maybe,
No,
maybe
it's
in
so
10 minutes
small.
after we do the other one.
there I should be able to get it. No, I think that can be, I think that language can be penned in.
to me, it's also giving the planning board discretion, so it's not a crazy change anyway. It's
Yeah, it's only if they approve it otherwise.
Otherwise, he is rock crushing.
I know. The guys are living one year, this is all hauled off.
Why don't we, I can just write it in, okay, rock crushing shall not be permitted on the subject property unless during site development plan approval.
Would it have been in an email?
Yeah, but you know what's kind of weird? Sorry, this is,
I have the version dated
yeah,
December 1st.
there's I've noticed on a couple of emails recently, there's been a disconnect between, it's probably my computer's fault, because I have all the stuff there and there's no stuff. But, so maybe that's what happened, but, so we're gonna just put the language in now. Unless during site development plan approval, on parcels of greater than 3 acres, the planning board approves rock crushing on site.
Right now, we're not that much different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what?
Now we're not
Well,
that
yeah.
different than the tax law.
This is like.
Just write it in.
March into March.
We're just gonna pass it.
Except it's not, you
We'll
got
pass it in
the
midnight.
whole page there, not the cut off part.
I don't know enough about rock crushing on site. If Ryan, does this in
And it's
a
not-
bid
it's
in the
important.
Well,
planning
it's
board.
just, it's loud.
It's
But-
another
But
loud.
sometimes, if it's a great big piece, then otherwise, then you've got trucks coming and going and coming and going. And on the big parcels, it might make more sense to do it on site. In addition to which, if they're that big, the noise is probably not gonna be bothering the people around it.
As much.
Yeah, as much as, but it's,
But it's just nice to be able to tell people now that they have 38 days as opposed to.
That's right, yeah,
They have it
30.
for 300 plus.
I have the actual language.
Oh.
I found the version, so you want me to let me just read through it, because there actually was a change even to this, it's very minor. Notwithstanding subsection B, the planning board may approve on-site rock crushing on lots of greater than 3 acres if it finds that on-site rock crushing would significantly reduce the amount of fill imported and exported. What I'm leaving off of there is it said imported and exported on-site, which was kind of confusing. So we took out on-site.
okay,
It's just imported and exported.
okay. That's a better way to do it.
Okay, sorry about that.
So, I mean, I think we already closed the public hearing, right? Did I do that or no?
I don't think so.
I don't think you did,
Okay.
so you can see.
Yeah, if
that
anyone has
there's
any comments now on the amended language.
On the rock crushing on site.
Otherwise, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. All in favor? I think we're all ready to vote, right? Resolved to adopt the local law amending the village code to add regulations on mechanical rock excavation. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
You have to say
With it as amended?
as amended.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Next is review of parking lot design proposed by Astorbuck Properties LLC to be located adjacent to 50 South Buckout Street.
I'm gonna put these up 'cause this is the third.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Andrew Tung for Astorbuck Properties, here with Bill Thompson. First, I'll apologize if I start into a coughing fit. I've had a cough for about a month, and I can't seem to shake it. But the doctor says it's nothing serious, so
Okay, good.
I'll be okay if I start.
Is it contagious? That's
No, it's not contagious either.
He's fine, but it's highly contagious.
Yes.
We do have water somewhere.
Yes, I brought my own as well. Thank you, thank you. So we've been asked to speak a little bit tonight about leasing practices at Stanford Bridge, 50 South Buckout, and Hudson Gray, 2 South Astor, as it relates to the proposed parking that we're have been working with you over the past few months. And what I'd like to do is start with the May 2015 letter to this board that was submitted by Astorbuck that described a survey that was taken of tenants per the board's request to see how much parking was being used. At that point in time, 151,000 square feet of the 160,000 square feet at the 2 buildings, that's 50 South Buckout and 2 South Astor, were occupied, essentially fully leased, 94% leased, with the balance at that time not leased but used for parking in the 2nd floor of the Hudson Gray building. Within that space, there were 251 employees at the time, which is a ratio, 251 over 151,000 square feet, of approximately 1.7 employees per 1,000 square feet, which is a fairly low ratio for, say, an office building, and it reflects the mixed occupancy of this building for different types of uses. Of those 251 employees, and this comes from the the May 15th letter that is on your website in the Astor book file. If you just go to the first, only 2 slides tonight. Yeah. 251 employees. Of those, from the survey, 215 drivers. So when those people were at the facility, they likely drove. And at that time, there were 145 spaces controlled and managed by the owners. And this drawing shows the location of those spaces. We actually today have 144, so we've lost one in the past 2.5 years. But the 65 around the building itself, the 50 South Buckout building, there are 20 in the west side of Hudson Gray, 2 South Astor, and 24 on the middle floor of that building, internal to the building, and 35 Metro North parking permits in the general lot. So 144 total, and that's the count today. So at the time it was 145, and so the difference between the number of drivers from the tenancy 215 and 145 was 70. So there was an overage of 70. And those people, when they were at the facility, were then circulating around the Astor Buck building. They did not find a space. Around the Stanford Bridge building, they did not find a space, and then they moved on to the local streets to find a place to park. So up to 70 if they were all in residence that day or in the building. Now, for planning purposes, we usually don't expect everybody to be in an office or a building at one time. So we say about 10 to 15% may be out sick, on vacation, out of the meeting, and not on site. The leasing policy from the beginning, in recognition of the parking conditions at this site, have been to look for low-density tenants. And when I say low density, that means a number of people inhabiting a certain square footage of space. Leases are priced based on the amount of square footage that a tenant takes, not the number of people that occupy that space. And so because of this condition, the owners have been, from the beginning, as they do at Bridge Street, interviewing tenants who are interested and finding out, what's the nature of your business, how many people do you have that will be in the space, do any of them take the train, which is advantageous because you're right across from the train station, because of the lack of space, lack of parking space. So people come in recognizing that, and frankly, it's to the owner's best interest to find tenants who have a low parking demand and low population density, because if they were to find somebody with a high demand, it would just infringe on the balance of the tenants, and nobody would be happy. So it's in not only their best interest, but in the interest of the neighborhood that they continue this policy. And the fact today, 2.5 years later, both buildings are still full. So they have the opportunity to be selective in their tenancy as they move forward. Today, in fact, the space is 97% leased. There is, of the 160,000 square feet, just 5,000 square foot vacant, 2 small offices. So the parking management policy that goes along with the leasing policy is that a limited number of parking stickers are issued to tenants on an annual basis based on the lease. And the stickers are affixed to the cars. The property management company, which is Cushman & Wakefield, then walks around the lot and checks for up-to-date stickers. Where they find that somebody's parking in the lot that does not have a sticker, they will increasingly up the warning, if you will. They will initially affix one of those nasty unauthorized parking stickers to the side of the window. It's difficult to peel off. And then eventually they'll have repeat offenders either booted or towed. So they recognize that parking is a valuable resource, and they strive to make sure that only the people with permits can park there. And in the summer, where for a number of reasons the parking demand gets higher or appears to get higher, they also hire summer interns to help with the patrolling of the lot. So moving forward to today, October 2017, as I mentioned, 97% of the space is leased. There are 144 spaces controlled and managed as shown in this drawing. For this 155,000 square feet, there have been 176 permits issued today. That is 176 permits, 144 spaces. So that's a 32-car overage, which is 22% more than the supply, which is a little higher than from a planning point of view, we believe that 10 to 15% overage is workable because of people that are not in the office every day or at their workplace every day. So that overage is a little higher than we'd like. So that's the reason, the basis for our request to add this additional 44 spaces in the Astor Buck lot. If you go to the next slide. So in the lot itself, which is just to the south of the 50 South Buckout building, there would be 49 spaces as we presented to you. They would require removing 5 spaces to provide access to that parking lot from the main circulation system, so there's a net increase of 44. So from 144, we would go to 188 parking spaces. That would be, today, that would have more spaces than permits, and in fact, we believe that's a reasonable overage going back to 2015, and the 188 drivers, we believe that, the 215 drivers, that's a 14% overage of those drivers who are not going to be there, we believe, every single day at the same time. And we believe this will be a much more workable solution for the building. So in fact, those additional 44 spaces means that drivers who would otherwise be circulating around the Stanford Bridge building looking for a space will now be able to go in directly into to that lot from the same circulation system, and those cars will be taken off the adjacent roadways, both for circulating and for parking. This will also, besides aiding on a day-to-day basis, this will also be a parking supply for special events at the building, such as Eileen Fisher has some Learning Lab presentations either in the afternoon or the evening when some of the supply will be available because people will have left, but also occasionally they have sales there during the day, and this would be a way to supply additional parking for that. So if this parking lot were to be approved, following construction, parking space in this area would still be a valuable commodity, and the owners would not thereby change their leasing or management policies. In fact, with this additional resource, they would be even more prone to make sure that people who are allowed to park there were parking there, and that this was serving basically these two buildings.
So when Eileen Fisher has a sale during the daytime, there aren't permit spots. People parking for that sale are going to be taking spots away from regular daytime parkers with permits? Well, whoever wants to answer.
She does a weekday sale one day a year, and during those days they would control the 49 space parking lot and valet it. It would be all theirs. That's one weekday. She does everything else on weekends.
Obviously, you've been addressing one of our, key questions is, the reason we're entertaining this whole thing is, we had complaints and issues from people, on Station Road, Maple Street, that area, that were complaining about, the constant over, the turnover of parking from the employees of Astor Buck, as well as just, they couldn't park on their own streets and that sort of thing. So I think the key to us, this was this was potentially addressing that issue, which was raised to us many times. And our big question is, are we, by taking, a net of 44 cars off the streets, are we definitely taking 44 cars off the streets, or are we potentially opening up, the potential for more cars because now, you can park closer and there isn't as much turnover and that kind of thing. And I think you're answering a lot of it with kind of the philosophy of the owners. So I think that's kind of where we're, I think that's really the best, we can do. I think we also, Larry and I spoke about other ways to limit it. If you're not telling us the truth, like it doesn't have to be a leap of faith necessarily. We could just make all those 6-hour spots, 2-hour spots, or 1-hour spots, or 30-minute spots, and in essence, kind of, make it impossible. So if you, took out a low density tenant and put in a high density tenant, and there's suddenly more cars on the street, we could make the street parking impossible for you, basically. That's one thing. I think one other question we had, I don't know if you have it yet, is the view from second floor windows. I don't know if you had that as well.
I have that on another
Okay.
another file. If
you don't have to get ahead yet.
Yeah.
We'll stay on this in case there's. Does anyone else on the board have questions about this?
It sort of builds on what you were saying, that at this point, I'm certainly willing to accept that you are looking for low-density tenants and that, but that also is what works for you. Should there be a situation in the future where you lose tenants and a new tenant comes along who has high parking needs, and you have enough space, as you rent that tenant, you've still got empty space, now new people come along, I just don't, there's no guarantee of how this is going to work in the future. It really depends upon a steady stream of low parking intensity tenants, which you envision, but can't guarantee.
You're right, there's no guarantee to be able to do it. I've been there 32 years, and the philosophy hasn't changed in 32 years. We don't make more money by having more cars. We spend more time on parking than anything else in our business. That drives zero revenue. And every parking space costs money, costs taxes, costs plowing, lighting. We have zero incentive to bring more cars in. In the way the economy is going today, people are working remotely. Small offices or low-density offices are the thing, of the future. We're bringing a new tenant into Bridge Street right now that is, they've got 17 people, and their average on-site is 3 per day. They're all over the country. And that's the trend that we see. I don't see that changing. People are driving bicycles to work and walking to work. We have no incentive to bring a lot of cars in. It just creates more work for us, more pain, more money. And you're right, there's no way I can guarantee it. Besides telling you this is what I've been doing for 32 years. And it's working pretty well.
Thank you.
Anything else here? Should we go on the next part?
Yes.
What I envision doing, so everyone knows, is after their presentation, I'll open it up for public comment. Go back to the, I'm sorry. It's really next to the agenda after the liaison.
Would you mind clarifying what 35 Metro North spaces are?
They're,
We rent the parking tags, like if you're a resident and you get a parking tag, we have 35 of those. They're white, they hang on the mirror.
So how did you guys get 35 of those? Because I know people in Irvington who have been waiting for 4 years and haven't even moved up the list.
In 2008, when the economy took a dive, Metro North had hundreds available, and we made an agreement with them to purchase 35 of them. So we held them without using them for years.
Smart move.
And excuse me?
Didn't get them reduced, didn't they take?
They took 30 away, or 25 away. We had 60.
You had
They took
60.
20 away, 25 away.
So
yes. Yeah, we can just wait. We can just wait to public comment, if you don't mind.
yeah, sure, sorry. I appreciate the clarification. No.
So we had shown several views in our earlier discussions, and so I pulled them all into the same sequence. So this is the aerial photo of showing us the location of the views. We have 6 existing views. They're all E's. So some of them have been taken from Google Street View, and the second floor ones from the building across to the river. We simulated based on our model because we didn't have access to the second floor there. But we'll just step through those briefly. So this is looking south. We've seen that the entry to the parking lot around the building is at right, and it would go directly in off of that to the proposed parking lot. Next view is looking from the opposite direction. You can actually see on the left side behind the existing trees that are on the vacant lot, the Hudson Gray building. From this view, and next shot. In the winter, it's a little bit more obvious from this location, and certainly as you drive by, you can now see the Hudson Gray building and the river. Next shot. That's a straight on from a street view, looking at Hudson Gray. Next shot. This is our simulation from the second floor of that same kind of mixed woodland trees that are on the vacant lot today.
That's a really off simulation. We can take a picture from an actual second floor window and we'll bring it in.
That'd be fine.
We can see the foot of the red building from our second floor.
Yeah, it won't be the same for every window, but that'd be great if you would.
Yeah, it's very off.
Yeah.
Is this existing or?
Existing.
Okay.
Is this more accurate?
That's a simulation.
Yeah. And this is the simulation. This is our simulation based on the topographic modeling. And we've tried to put in those trees again from the second floor. If we have an actual second floor view, I'd be happy to model from that location. Okay. So we then, for the proposed action, we've overlain the proposed parking lot and landscaping on the south lot, and now have 2 views, one of which you've seen before, P1, and then P2 from the simulation from the second floor. So P1, those taller trees would be removed, a mixed landscape buffer along the front of that proposed lot. The proposed lot, you enter off the same access way as circulates around the building, and it's 10 feet below, generally, South Buckout. And then the next shot shows our simulation from the second floor, looking over those proposed plantings as they initially go in at 6 to 8 feet. You do see the 2 South Buckout and also, 2 South Astor and 1 South Astor and the river beyond. But if you have an existing shot that you'd like me to work with, I can also model that with the proposed landscaping.
So just to clarify, so what this is showing is that from at least according to your simulation, from a second floor window on the street, you would not be seeing the cars.
You will see, if you can see, there's 2, no, yeah, you can zoom in. Let's see if this works on the screen. Not that well. So, yeah. So you will not see that there's 2 rows of cars.
Oh, I see, okay.
Right. So the cars on the inside closest to the street you won't see because they're down 10 feet. The cars on the opposite side you may see over the top of the
Thank you.
planting.
So all the trees and shrubs that you see there, I know in the past presentations, we've seen how they are laid out, and maybe your one other slide shows that. It's just a little hard to see where those trees are when you're looking down. I guess that's...
If we go back to the plan view, if you go back...
So if you go back to the other one, it's kind of, go back and forth, and you see... what you're seeing is kind of the tops and sides of those, and where they actually are.
They're in the strip immediately behind the sidewalk.
All right, so you have to, if we
Right.
could zoom in on that one there, it would
So what's proposed is to maintain the existing curb along South Buckout, to put a 5-foot sidewalk behind that, and then have a planting strip in between that and the wall, the east wall of the parking structure. And that would be, as we presented earlier on, mixed deciduous and evergreen, more of a naturalized planting rather than a strict formal street planting.
Okay. Just to remind me, how much, at the widest spot along the street back to, I guess it's kind of on the, not quite the north section, but right before that little bump out, that's about how many feet there of shrubbery and trees?
Yeah, there's a couple of, it's 9.5 feet here, 10 feet here, 7.5 feet here. Here it's about 3 times that, about 18 to 20 feet.
Right, so 18 to 20.
So that varies with the,
Right.
because the road curves and the wall is straight.
The narrowest point is the 9.5 feet. As you go to the left, it gets greater and greater going towards.
And what does the southernmost end of the lot look like?
Now you're challenging.
Now
The
the
one
zoom.
closest to the home that's on
He's
there.
got to zoom that section.
I know, but it's not grabbing it.
Remind me, refresh me on this, the sidewalk currently stops at the driveway, is that correct?
The sidewalk currently stops at the drive, there is no sidewalk
There isn't
today.
at all there
Right.
until you.
I mean, it's not going north from the driveway area.
Yes, if you, can we switch to the other show, Larry?
Well, we'll do one question at a time.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
do
sorry.
your thing. That's fine.
I do.
You were doing the south.
So with Janice, you said the part on the south, so that's about not 9 feet in the middle, maybe more like 6 in the most narrow, and
It's 7 feet at the center and 5 feet, 12 feet at the ends. Plus there's a 20-foot easement beyond that. Within those easement, that's I've had a chance to research that easement more closely. It's not a Con Ed easement, it's a private easement between the adjacent owner and Astor Buck to go through that property. And we can locate those utility lines, and I believe, I need to check with the Bill's attorneys, but we can plant judiciously around those existing utilities once we locate them. So that was one of the questions that was raised in an earlier meeting, can we do any planting in that 20-foot strip?
so which
I think we can.
adjacent property owner, to the south or behind?
No, the 20-foot easement is here,
Right.
not colored in.
That easement is between us and the Rancid.
Between the,
And then behind, not to the south,
Yes,
to
I'm sorry.
To the west.
Still, the plantings in there now, so you're saying in that bare space you couldn't put more
yes,
plantings?
yes,
Some limited.
And that's how many feet there? That's
20.
20 feet there, and then
7 plus 5, yeah.
right.
I guess it depends, is that a sewer easement or?
No, it's gas, it's natural gas. And the easement is close to this area here, so there's a lot of room on the south, on the border, the plant.
The gas, I think there is a force main in there too, a sanitary force main.
They're side by side.
So that's something you would expect to do if this were to go forward?
Yes, yes.
Would you mind pointing out where the area that the town owns starts and stops?
Sure. Where it's
In here.
Yeah, it's the first part of the, you can see the line. There were a series of individual, I think 25-foot wide lots, and the first one next to the driveway is the one that's owned by the village.
Now, I know, based on some comments that we made a number of months ago, you added screening to the rear along the Hudson Gray building. Can you talk a little bit about the obstacles from continuing that screening southward? There's obviously, after you get past the property line, it stops, with a little dog leg in up there.
Yes.
And so is that just that there's not enough space, or is there something else going on?
That's where the utilities are. It's where that gas line.
No, I'm talking about on the,
You're talking about it here?
talking about in.
Yeah,
in-
that's,
Gas line comes in here and goes this way.
Oh.
And there was also a very limited space there. And now that's in front of the apartment building.
The apartment building, right, exactly. That's, I was just trying to get a sense of what kind of space there was there.
Is it a retaining wall on the rear and the west side?
There is a retaining wall also.
Yes.
And how high is that?
It varies, it's, I think, between 10 and perhaps 18 feet.
Behind the apartment building, it's like quite high.
Yeah, there's an existing retaining wall there today that's already, I think to the further south, it's taller than that.
But it's
I believe in previous meetings it was stated that it would be up to 20 feet high.
up to 20 feet.
Behind the,
And
that'd
do the
be
apartments
behind.
look out at that at present?
They look out at their own retaining wall at present. They would look out at a wall on top of a wall, yes.
Do you mind if I ask a question? Would you be losing those trees on that side where where your additional retaining wall would be? In other words, instead of looking at a wall with foliage, would they be looking at just a bare wall then?
I'd have to see whether there's planting at the base of their wall. I don't know.
No, it's just asphalt to the walls.
Right.
I think we did an analysis, I can't recall now exactly, but maybe Mark, you remember the number of, when the whole current trees were looked at in that area, those that were, if you were, going to the tree commission, how many would actually be in the category of needing to be protected?
I don't remember the exact
Exactly.
number, so we'd have to see the table again. But,
Yeah, okay.
the issue in some of that area, as you get toward the rear, is that there's, there is a fairly steep slope there, so. I forgot, the number was somewhere between 10 and 18 maybe. That sounds like it could be high, but.
It's really high.
Yeah, I think,
And mostly black locusts, almost all.
I think more like 10, but that could be too low.
Sounds about right.
A lot of saplings.
So any other questions here, then as I can
Can I, going back to just complete the total number of parking spots available to you, do you have any guarantee that Metro North will continue renting the number you now have spots to you?
There's no absolute guarantee. They tried to take those 35 back from us also, and we hired an attorney. And we worked with them on it, and they have agreed to let us keep them. So I think that issue's resolved, but
But there's no term that which they agreed to let you keep them?
the Metro North won't put a guarantee on it.
Okay, and there's no obligation to issue a permit to any particular entity, correct?
Correct.
What happens year to year as an individual puts their name in to get a Metro North? Do they automatically get re-upped if they are a current buyer of a permit?
Yes.
Or not?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the agreement we're working with right now, that we have to re-up.
If you're re-upping, it would be more likely that,
Yes.
And that's very similar to the way it is in the other spot. If you have the spot, you get,
Right, so it's when
you get to
somebody-
renew it every year.
it's when somebody leaves,
Right.
that somebody else gets to come in, otherwise they don't.
So if there's no more questions up here, we'll open it up to public comment.
I would just like to, one comment, it'd be nice to see if you guys could work a little bit about what additional screening you could get into that rear area, I mean, the south area, right now.
Those last 10 spaces?
No, I mean, well, I'm talking about the south area, the easement area.
buffer.
Yeah, the buffer area. Because right now,
That's the key.
it'd be nice to see what other kind of protection you can offer to the right next door neighbor especially.
I think I'll do it first, since someone jumped up. I'm going to read BK's letter since he couldn't be here tonight. Dear Board of Trustees, at the outset, may I thank you for all your sparing and valuable time to govern the village, retaining its unique historical and residential character. Despite a few years of opposition by residents of Buckout Street, proposals by Astor Buck Properties to build a car park in our residential area, why is it the Board of Trustees still entertaining revised proposals for the same project? What the Astorbuck is seeking is a wholesale variance to the zoning laws of the village, converting a residential area into a commercial area. I believe the Planning Commission has already dismissed those plans. As a resident for well over 36 years of South Buckout Street, I strongly oppose the car park as it will endanger the lives of residents on the street. I urge Astorbuck and Board of Trustees to consider alternate locations such as the property currently used by the Public Works Department facing the railroad station. Irvington is primarily a residential village, and please try to retain the unique character. As I have to be in Manhattan this evening, I'm able to attend, please, in a meeting and protest against their project. Regards, VCAT. Whoever else wants to speak.
If
you just mind coming up to the mic and saying your name, sorry.
My name's Gordon Fury. I live on 20 Willow Street in Irvington, up the road from here. And I'm somewhat new, to this issue. So I wanted to ask if, sort of backtracking a little here, I assume that taking this residential land and public land wasn't the only possibility that you considered. So I wanted to know what other solutions did you consider before going down this road?
Renting for Metro North and converting the inside of the Hudson Gray going to car parking. So those are the only viable assets that we have. We don't own anything else to do with.
Well, okay. So, I mean, what, actually, may I keep going? A little sort of back and forth?
Yeah, we figured, we usually allow people about 3 minutes.
3 minutes,
so,
okay.
Maybe you should grab the mic when you're answering,
Sorry.
so we have it on record.
So what we have right now is the commercial needs driving the use of residential and public land. Another way it could be is that residential use and public land drives the use of the commercial property. That would be different. So that would be like saying, we don't have the parking, so maybe we have to change the way we use our commercial property. So one of the things, for instance, I'm building a building in the South Bronx with other artists. In order to have a certain number of units to make our project viable economically, we had to dig down deep in the ground under the building with some kind of complicated elevator system to park cars. So I'm just kind of wondering, hey, what about you guys? What about parking under your building? What about excavating your building and getting this new technology of elevators and whatever? In other words, just taking residential and public land, I mean, that's the easy way, but maybe that would be too easy. Maybe you should try harder to find parking within your premises and make your building sustainable in that way. Any comment?
Yeah, the building's fully occupied. You can't excavate the building when it's fully occupied.
Well, you get it under.
And there's a no parking garage restriction in the village of Irvington. So it's out of my control.
Well, this is also somewhat out of your control. So that would be something also you could pursue with the village. Probably over my 3 minutes.
Well, no, yeah, just I think it's better to kind of make comments and if someone wants to respond rather than going back and forth.
Well,
Hi, my name is Andy Bergman. We're residents of Buckout Street. You've heard from me many times. It's the same issue here over and over, so you're going to hear the same things from me. The residents of South Buckout Street do not want a parking lot in the residential area. We bought homes in the residential area, not a commercial neighborhood. We are not just concerned with the trees that would be blocking this parking lot. We don't want a parking lot. We don't want the noise created by cars in that parking lot. We do not want to see the cars in the parking lot. We do not want more traffic on our street, which has already been deemed in writing by the planning board that was their belief that this would only cause more traffic on our street. I would bring back the question that was asked in that letter: why is the board still entertaining this question after essentially the same plan being proposed over and over again for many years? Well, why are we still looking at this? Why are we still talking about this? It's causing a great amount of stress and anguish for the neighbors of our street. As you can see, more and more people are attending these meetings. They're getting babysitters that are coming out on Tuesday nights. When is going to end at some point, or are we just going to keep coming here for years? That's my question to you.
Well, I mean, I think that, again, we've gotten, dozens and dozens of complaints about parking in Sparrow Park, Station Road, Maple, that area, that, we attribute to the success of Astor Buck. So we want to explore a potential, what we think is a potential opportunity to address that issue. And I think that's why we're looking at it. We want to see from where we first started to now. I think it's actually improved quite a bit. I think it was a very different proposal the first time we saw it. Is it the perfect proposal? Probably not. But I think that's where we still want to hear what can be done.
I mean, respectfully, if you look back at the other plans, it's almost identical. The trees around it might be different, but it's a parking lot on that plot. So, and we're still talking about it. We're still entertaining these possibilities. We, the members of South Buckout Street, would like to see some closure on this issue and have the board vote once and for all to end these discussions. It's the parking problems of the owners of this building. That's unfortunate for them, but that's not our issue. That's not a reason to turn a residential neighborhood into a commercial zone. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Andrew Bergman.
Okay, thank you.
2 ends at the end. Thanks.
Whoever wants to go first.
Cheryl Brandwine, 85 South Buckout Street. Another letter was submitted from my neighbor who has arrived, Bruce Perez. I just want to make sure that's read into the record as well.
I didn't receive that letter.
It should have been received. It was sent by noon on Friday, and you or someone wrote back saying it would be read into the record.
Yeah, I was gone.
I haven't.
Well, if they're here, happy for them to read it.
Do you have a copy?
No.
Okay, Bruce doesn't have a copy.
I do have it here. I have.
Everybody? I haven't.
I just want to make sure everyone's voices are heard.
My phone gets, when I search it, freezes.
In the interim, I just would like to note that it keeps coming up, the Sparrow Park Station Road. About 2 years ago, the residents complained about the Astor Buck people parking on their streets. I think they'd be horrified to know that this is the answer. In fact, because the planning board has said that it will increase traffic on Station Road and create a traffic magnet for this neighborhood. So speaking so that they can voice their opinions, I think they'd maybe like to come back and...
Sure, and we're actually asked the planning board to look at the newer plans as well as the additional information about the amount of parking, because that was kind of absent when they first made their opinions. So.
Okay, and thank you. I actually have some prepared remarks. That's my off-the-cuff stuff. I'd like to thank you all for asking questions about this project. I think a lot more questions need to be asked. Bill Thompson asked at the end of the last work session, have I answered all your questions? I am left with so many more questions. For you, this is just another agenda item. For us, this is so much stress, so much anxiety. It is what we think about when we go to bed. It is what we think about when we wake up. This is the single biggest investment we have made in our lives, in our kids' future, and I do not care about Astor Buck's parking lot. He can build it wherever he wants, just not in this location. So I'm left with questions. I'm going to give you my top 10 list, my David Letterman top 10 list. But I will tell you there's many more, and the public is asking more and more questions as well, because this is now on social media with the Save South Buckout Street 10533, and other members of the public are going to be asking many more questions. So my first question, why is the planning board memo from a year ago not the end of this discussion? My neighbor Andy referenced this, but I'd also like to know why that memo is not posted on the village website. It's the only document that is not posted on the village website. I had to obtain it pursuant to a Freedom of Information Law request. So I'd like to know why that is not posted. I'd like everyone in the public to know it is now posted on 10533. Please read it. It's a very important document. The planning board memo said specifically that this project will increase traffic on Station Road, that the site was intended to be a buffer between commercial and industrial uses along the railroad and the residential uses on South Buckout Street and Spiro Park, that the Astor Buck building is actually in violation of the zoning requirements, that the establishments in that building primarily provide services to residents of the village of Irvington and the area immediately adjacent thereto. And I quote, "Creating more parking for the Astor Buck property will only encourage more cars to come park at the building and on the side streets around the building. The lack of parking acts as a control on how many people and vehicles can be accommodated in the building. More parking will allow Astor Buck to rent to more businesses and draw more people and vehicles to the area. In addition, the creation of more parking will cause more traffic on Station Road, especially during rush hour." So I'd like to see that document posted on the village website. The other FOIL document I received was a heads up from the mayor to Bill Thompson about my Change.org petition in opposition to this parking lot many years ago, which is interesting because the adjacent property owners have never received notice about this project from Astor Buck. I found out about it at the farmer's market, and then my kids and I distributed flyers, and here we are today, almost 10 years later, at the design proposal stage. I would also like to know why were we assured by the mayor in writing that the Astor Buck petition was withdrawn, only to learn in May that it was a misunderstanding because they started soil testing very loudly for 3 days in May, and I said to the workers, "No, there's no more parking lot." And he said to me, "You got trumped." I would also like to know about your process. As the lead agency, which you assumed from the Westchester Planning Board, it was sent to the Planning Board for recommendations. And they made their recommendations a year ago. And now, why are we ignoring their recommendations? They clearly oppose the parking lot at this location. Why is the Planning Board needing to re-review this process and the new proposals? The soil testing is another question I have. When Astor Buck nearly blew up the neighborhood by bulldozing over the gas lines on the utility easement, my neighbor Dan Greenberg wrote a very strongly worded letter about that. No response, no penalties, no outcry. Astor Buck has admitted that this parking lot won't even solve its parking problems, and yet we are continuing to entertain design proposals, new ones. Again, since 2009, I moved in 2010. Since I've lived in my house, this is what we've been dealing with. Tremendous stress and anxiety. I'd like to know why Bill Thompson's threat to build low-income housing if we don't agree to his parking lot was not publicly condemned by the Board of Trustees. We welcome all people in our community, people of all incomes, and they should not be utilized as a joke or a threat, as I've said before. And My neighbor Gordon also asked, why have other options and alternatives to permanently destroying a residential neighborhood in the heart of the village never been explored? I've mentioned many years the DPW, now the Astor Street lots. You're taking comment for, Larry asked a good question about the Bridge Street lot. And you said, well, there's different partners. Well, let's make an agreement. Let's make a deal for some more spots. Surely we can work this out. And I won't even get into the timestamp photography I have taken with my kids of the many spots on my street that are available. At 11 a.m. Thursday, there were 10 spaces. This morning, 6 spaces at 10 a.m., 15 spaces at 3:30. Come drive by and take a look, please. I would like to know why there are so many untruths in the Astorbuck Environmental Assessment form. I will give you some of the examples, and I would like everyone to review it. It's on the village website. It was asked, is the parking lot construction? It was considered not construction, and so therefore no long-form environmental assessment is required. Are we sure about that? This is not construction? Will the proposed action exceed existing ambient noise levels during construction, operation, or both? The answer was no. Will the proposed action remove existing natural barriers that could act as noise barriers or screening? No. Same questions on outdoor lighting. Initially, it was said that the initial EAF said that there would be, they checked yes to endangered and threatened plants and animals on the lots, and then it was changed during the revised EAF. A lot of questions. And just so you know, the restrictive covenant limiting the use to a parking lot does not sell me or any of my neighbors on this project. My last question, and I have many more, but I want to give everyone time here, but the land swap. The land swap. We're trading village-owned land with a corporation, a corporate gift to literally pave the way for a parking lot. How can you justify this in the face of all this opposition? How can you explain this to us? You know, the mayor, you said there would be a high bar for rezoning, but we're continuing to hear design proposals year after year after year. I think we should not waste any more of your time. I don't think we should waste any more of our time. I don't think we should waste any more of Astorbuck's time. We, the people, the Irvington residents, the public, our concerns should be paramount. They should not be trumped by a corporate entity and their quest for a giant parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Kathy Kaufman, 28 North Ecker Street. I have to say that I usually come in to these meetings and end up feeling like, maybe, I don't know. I have to agree. I really don't understand. I mean, I don't have a dog in this fight, but I love this village, and I actually just don't. I really, honestly, don't understand why this has been dragged out to this point. I feel like, you know, I'm really here as a resident because I care about the village and I care about all the areas and I care about this piece of land like I care about all the land. I do see the land in the village as our provenance. We don't own, we own very little land in town. And once we sell it, it's gone. and we cannot foresee in the future what we'll need, what our needs will be. It's not knowable. This is not a large lot that the village owns, but it is, it's not an insignificant lot either. And I mean, if it were life or death, I might understand why we would give that up. But we just have no idea. There's almost nothing left in town unless we're going to move the fire department, which I know we think about sometimes. I just wanted to hand you guys, I made a little rendering of the second floor view from, and I didn't think to bring a whole bunch of them. Sure. But on the bottom is your architect's rendering, which might or might not still, and this is literally, I'm not an architect, okay, so I just made this. But I added parking so that you could see what it would look like if they were actually, if the lot were full, which is what the view will be during the day for our neighbors. I just think it's important to be able to visualize, it was important for me to be able to visualize how big of a deal is this really, because I hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about it. I have a few comments. One is that I respect your position, honestly I do. And I'm not hostile to you or your businesses. I think they've done a lot for the village and I appreciate them. I've also not been engaged in this, so I don't have any hurt feelings about it. But I would say that it's very obvious from the conversation and from what I've read and seen that this is not a fatal situation with regard to the viability of this business. And nor will it be solved by, I think it will be helpful incrementally for them to have more spots, but I think that the business is obviously functioning. Yes, people are driving around in circles, so are Irvington residents. My neighbors are also driving around in circles, looking for parking. They come home with their kids and their babies and their dogs and their groceries, and they can't park, and they have to park a few blocks away. That's part of our village. And so, yeah, it's inconvenient. Everyone thinks it's inconvenient. There's a zero sum, we think, of parking. I don't think this will solve it. I also feel like we're going to go down a road of implementing a plan that's costly to our neighbors, that will cost them peace of mind and cost them property value and cost the village in terms of its appeal. And we really don't know if we need this yet because we have a whole parking plan that we've been discussing quite a lot over the last 6 months, and we haven't actually implemented it, so we don't really know to what extent it's going to solve the issue of the scarcity of employee parking in the village. So that seems to me to be putting the cart way before the horse. We know that 2/3 of the Main Street area has plenty of parking, that the middle area has a scarcity and unmet need. So in a way, we're going to do something that's irreversible and clearly costly, in no other way, deeply psychologically costly to these people who have been through this for a decade. And we don't actually even know if we need it. So maybe we'll end up with like the big high school on the hill and all the bond debt that we have from it, and to realize later that, oh, the demographics don't really require this. I understand that you think that's probably not a good analogy, but forget that. But it doesn't seem to me that even from your own analysis, this is not impinging on the viability of your property as a rental property. So why would we be going ahead with this? Why would we be doing it? And I guess, to me, I have hypotheticals because I don't know. I haven't been involved in the process and I'm not inside everybody's head. But it seems to me that from the perspective of the village, which is first and foremost, as this person said, here to represent our residents and the interests of our residents, and I believe that is who our village government should represent. I hope I don't have that wrong. I maybe have to go back and rethink civics. But in the interest of our residents, what is really at stake here for us? And I guess the question is, okay, is this a major employer in the village? Maybe you want to tell, I don't know how many of the people who work there live in the village. Does anybody know?
I don't want to cut you off, but we do try to keep these to 3 minutes, so.
Oh, sorry, have I been going on? I'm just starting up here.
That's a good point, so.
No, but, I mean, the things that we think about when we think about the interest of the village in maintaining employers and businesses here is tax revenue and it's employment. And those are the two main things, and vitality. So maybe we're looking at people who are going to patronize restaurants and things like that. So I guess my question is, Janice looks like she might be answering me, or are you just going to tell me I'm done? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was trying to get you done.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was so intriguing that you wanted to ask me to continue on. So I don't know how many employees, I think it would be useful to know, but frankly, honestly, I think that these processes have become an incredible burden on the village. I feel like when you have somebody who's petitioning a zoning variance who cannot build as a right, then I think we should limit the amount of time that we spend entertaining, and there's no obvious village interest. And I think there is, to me, and you guys can talk about it later and tell me what the obvious village interest is, then I think, let people sleep at night. And the other thing I just want to add, I'm sorry, I know I'm going on and on, is that I also think that there one unexplored solution to Bill's problem that I would like to see revisited is a multi-story parking lot. I know, horrible, but with a green roof, with a garden on top of it that would only be visible from above. You would only see the garden extending out toward the river. And I lived across from one of these in Melbourne, and it was a concrete structure that looked absolutely gorgeous from above, from the palisade above it, and was a wonderful community asset. And I just think that that would solve his problem. This won't solve his problem. But I'd like to see these things put to bed much sooner. I think honestly, we live in such uncertain times, and these things are driving people crazy. Every morning we wake up and wonder, will we lose the village as we know it? And I just think that we shouldn't be needing to defend this stuff endlessly.
I think the disappointing thing now is that, we're not even in the first inning of the process. This is still conceptual, so, that's why I don't even remember in any environmental reviews that they did one, but,
Yeah, you have, they submitted an EAF.
Yeah, so we never opined on it or anything.
It's up to the board to answer those questions.
So, and I think the other big thing is the land swap, where, we haven't even considered that at all. So you mean that would be another big hurdle, because we're not even close to that yet, in my opinion. If we're still saying, if we can as a board say, conceptually this is okay, now give us a real plan. That's the thing. And
that puts a burden on them, and if they don't have it as a right, and the village is obviously pulling intensely against it, and I think they are. And we haven't even explored the other parking situations that we have a whole plan out there that we haven't even implemented yet. So why?
Does anybody else like to?
Okay, so.
Hi, my name is Kala Ranganathan, and we've stayed on South Buckout Beach. We've been here for a gazillion years. And what I found quite distressing is, because we have a view of the river, supposedly, our taxes went up sky high. They rated our property as worth $1,100,000. In which universe would you get over $1 million for the little plot of land with a little house? That was fine. We lowered it, but it's still very high. We fought very hard to get the taxes down. And now you stick a parking lot on the edge of the street. What is it going to our property values while we are paying such huge taxes? It's not fair to us to, beat us up both ways, remove the quality of the neighborhood and also raise taxes. That's not fair. And yes, we can desert Irvington and say, okay, bye-bye, but who's going to buy it at these atrocious prices with a parking lot at the end? This is not about stress. This is about actual practical money on the table. Secondly, every time when I come home, I consciously avoid South Buckout. If I make a left, I don't know who I'm going to hit. Forget the fact I'm a bad driver. I don't know who I'm going to hit or who's going to hit me. It's so narrow that you're inching to the right, to the left, you're weaving and dodging. Good, you know. What sport is that? Where do you dodge? Is that baseball, basketball, some game, okay? That's what we're doing. It's so treacherous that we always come on Station Road to avoid Buckout Street. Now, if you're going to put more cars and more, and all the sides are blocked, where are we going to go unless we get flying cars? I strongly suggest that you do not bring in any more traffic into South Buckout because it's parallel to Broadway and we have enough cars already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You want to go?
He was up the second, I guess. Once you go first, then you can go. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Stephen Friend. I live on Maple Street, one block away. And I'll just comment. I mean, it was brought up about how, you know, residents on the other streets feel about customers of businesses parking on the other streets. You know, in my experience, that hasn't been a problem. I mean, anecdotally, you know, one night somebody says, "Hey, I'm just parking here to go to yoga," and that was absolutely fine with me. I am, as a father of young children in the neighborhood, I am very opposed to what was very clearly stated in the planning board's recommendations, which is that this will bring more traffic, more cars, certainly more pollution of various types to our small residential community, and that is noise pollution at night. This is, you know, car alarms. This is car exhaust. This is a lot more cars you're bringing into a very small community with lots of little kids. And the final thing I'll say, and I'm going to keep it way under 3 minutes, is that I'm also here on Monday night, taking time away from my family on a cold winter night to support the residents of South Buckout Street, because in a community like this where everybody takes zoning regulations very, very seriously, you know, I'm sure that a lot of folks on South Buckout Street have been coming, and maybe sympathies die down over some period of time. But what this process is doing to these folks that live in these houses on this TV screen is very, very substantial. And so I would respectfully request that the trustees do exactly what the planning board of this town has asked them to do, and not, I won't say destroy, but greatly alter a small residential neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please.
I'm David Brandwein of 85 South Buckout Street. I just wanted to point something out that perhaps the board may not recall, that initially when this conversation started, the first time I heard it, this tale was told to me in the light that this was going to solve the pedestrian problem on South Buckout Street. Now, I'm going to step over to the camera, to the television screen, and just point out that the path that's being created by this ends in someone's front yard and doesn't continue down South Buckout Street at all. So it doesn't solve any pedestrian walking problem at all. So I'm just going to walk over and point it out. Here's the sidewalk, and the sidewalk ends in Dan Greenberg's front yard. So you're forced to cross the street to a viable path, right? But on this model. So the solution that we were told we were going to have, we don't have from this. So I still fail to see why the board is considering this model when the purpose of the model, as far as I understood it at least, was to solve the pedestrian issues that existed on South Buckout Street, which this clearly won't. So again, when you're swapping property, keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Did you find Bruce's letter?
I did. Should I read it, Bruce? Dear Mayor Smith and Village Trustees, I'd like to again voice my opposition to the Astor Buck parking lot. I copied below the original letter from Cheryl Brandwine, whose points I strongly agree with and whose argument is the most persuasive. All residents would like an answer to her question of why we're still discussing this and discussion of our alternative suggestions. Additionally, I already live with the daily noise of early morning parking and traffic at 50 Buckout, as well as idling trucks waiting to load and unload, and extremely noisy trash pickups starting at 6 a.m. for the building. In my home, I can smell exhaust fumes at least 2 to 3 times a week from idling trucks and cars. This is a very busy corner. Creating the parking lot will not only increase the above for me and my neighbors, but rob me of the second buffer from the lot, as well as opening up a rather ugly view of the lower buildings. Irvington should be more about quality of life for its residents. Please read this letter on Monday. Respectfully, Bruce Perez and Tracy Everding, 16 Station Road.
So I had one question, the previous comment about the sidewalk. I think that that's working on old information. I mean, unless I'm missing something, the sidewalk actually doesn't extend on the west side of any longer along the parking lot area, but it expects pedestrians to cross over South Buckout to the east side.
Because there is no there's no sidewalk past on the other side.
Well, I just want to declare, you might want to look at some of the most recent diagrams. They're not here tonight, I don't think, but anyways, there was a diagram showing where the crossover would happen.
Okay.
And so that you could get to a viable sidewalk on the east side.
On the existing sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay, so.
So it wouldn't be a
this model
sidewalk
doesn't affect
to
the-
dead end, but it would still require crossing.
All right, so it still doesn't solve the problem of pedestrian crossover.
Right.
Which I think was the initial reason why.
Well, it does
I was
add
told
a new
police that the board
sidewalk
was
down.
considering.
It does add a new sidewalk down from the end of the building to like the train area. So that's the new part.
I mean, I don't know if that's the problematic area, though.
I mean, it's not just crossover, but it's viability of any kind of pedestrian pathway down to the train station.
Okay.
So you have to look at the whole route.
But that's not what this model is addressing, though. And initially, there was a plan to put a sidewalk on in front of this project, and now there isn't. So, you know.
We should come up and talk into the mic so it can be on the record.
Okay.
No, seriously, because
No, I'm happy to.
it's not picked up a lot of times by
Pardon me.
the area mics.
So I understand correctly now that there's no, this model doesn't consider a walking path, is that correct?
The path ends at the driveway, and there's if I
Okay.
remember correctly, there's a further.
Some of those crosswalks.
Somewhere else is-
That's fine. All I'm saying is that this path is incomplete and doesn't create a continuous path down South Buckout Street that ends in someone's front lawn, and they have to cross the street in order to navigate by South Buckout Street. And so, you know.
Well, yeah, but the goal was.
He has the right picture.
Yes.
No, I do. Look, I'm talking about this spot right here. Right here, there's an area where the path ends, and that's in Mrs. Greenberg's front lawn.
Well, that's different than this.
Oh, it is different. Yeah. That was the original plan.
Yeah, I do have that, if you go back to the original.
Now I'm confused because I don't know where, I thought there was a crossover
There is,
midway.
it's in the middle. Yeah, you're right, Mark.
And go 1, 2,
Yes.
5 forward.
And if you can enlarge that a little bit. Sorry.
We'll go there. There you go, hold on. Now can you grab it?
I'm about to run out of battery, that's gonna be fun.
That purple bit.
Yeah. So this was, we discussed this at our last appearance.
20%.
The orange are the existing sidewalks on South Buckout, and the purple are the proposed sidewalks as part of the streetscape improvement for Astor Buck. And as somebody pointed out in an earlier meeting, continuing the sidewalk all the way to the end of the proposed parking lot, the south end in front of adjacent to Greenberg's, house would be a sidewalk to nowhere, because it seems unlikely that the village will add a sidewalk in front of those two houses, which would connect to the sidewalk that's further south. So what we propose to do is to pick up the pedestrians going on either side. They'd cross over to the east side of South Buckout, and we'd have a diagonal crosswalk at the center of, approximately the center of the parking lot, from which you could then follow all the way down to the railroad station. So to get to the station, you do have to cross South Buckout at some point. There is a second crosswalk that exists today. It's actually a little further north than the second dashed purple line coming down Station Road. But those would give two opportunities for people to cross South Buckout at a crosswalk.
Any other public comment?
Can we also just establish that a sidewalk and a parking lot have nothing to do with each other? Originally, the sidewalk came up as a way to try to justify the parking lot. If they want to build a sidewalk, they're more than willing to do so. It has absolutely nothing to do with the parking lot. I would,
Before we go, because we always leave these meetings with no resolution, if the board can just speak for a moment to answer the question that was asked several times, why are we still entertaining this idea? I think that would be great for those of us that are here in attendance. Thanks.
Well, I think what we're looking at is, does this materially improve parking in the area? Does it alleviate the parking issues? Does it improve pedestrian and traffic safety? But is it all worth it? Is that worth that trade-off? And I think I know your answer. I think we're still trying to do
Right. I mean, why, like, since 2009, why is it different? Like, why are we still asking that question? Why are we still considering that? Is the real question.
Because we consider this a new proposal. If they come up with another different proposal, we might consider it. I think we're still at a decision point.
Right.
And when they say, hey, we have a new plan, we show it to you, we say, yes, we'll look at it, because we're still trying to potentially solve issues that have been raised to us. And you guys are 100% right. We would not personally be impacted by this, but we look at it whole village-wide. We look at it, if someone said anywhere, you're going to be impacted.
But let's say they just cut off another square foot out of one corner. Is that a new proposal that they can just come back with?
It depends. If we ask, the thing we've been focusing on for the last couple months is how many cars are we getting off the road? I'm still not sure if we're all comfortable with that now, but we asked them for more information. We don't like to have closed-door meetings, so we have them in public. So I understand it's hard to get here, and it's hard on us too. I have kids too. I don't like to stay on
I'm a public official, with all due respect.
I understand
We're being
that.
subjected to
And I
this on a regular basis,
I
and
signed
I'm
up for the
presented.
job. I completely understand that. But I represent 7,000 people, not the 12 people that are adamantly opposed to this. And I think if I said there was an invisible underground parking lot, you still wouldn't want it. So, I think, it's,
I don't think that's a fair statement.
Okay, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said that.
No, I really don't. I think it sort of sheds light on your feelings toward this project, that you think that we're somehow an annoyance to you. I'm terribly sorry.
You're not an
But you're
annoyance.
building a parking lot in front of my house is going to create a tremendous amount of traffic, and foot traffic and noise. They haven't addressed the lighting issues that we're concerned about. There'll people be loitering in parking lots in front of our home. I moved here from the city to get away from this, to get away from urban sprawl and overdevelopment. That's why I'm here, to raise my children. I have two children in your school system paying heavy taxes.
With all due respect, if we said go ahead with this,
No, I've been talking about this now for 8 years, since we moved here. Enough.
do you know when you gave us your first actual proposal on this? It wasn't in 09, because I wasn't even there.
Something I apologize. It wasn't 8 years ago, but it's certainly been 3 or 4.
I agree.
And
The original petition is on the village website. It's dated 2009. And then it was withdrawn, and then there's a new proposal that came in 2014. But we have been dealing with this since 2009 and before.
And definitely hear your concerns, and I think they're justified, and that's why we're weighing them. And you know what, we will have a resolution one way or the other soon. And I think it's just when, in good faith for you guys and good faith for them, we wanted to hear what they had to say. Because this was, if this was really going to solve the parking problem, I think it's something that's definitely worth pursuing. If it's not, then that's where, and yes, I know the planning board said they thought it would create more parking and traffic. I've asked if the planning board, has anything changed, and, we value their opinion, obviously.
Not enough then, because they
But we haven't,
issued a statement recommending against this project. The zoning change, the whole concept The
Yes.
planning board is being ignored, and I think
Well, they're
that...
definitely not being ignored, because we're meeting with them again, and, we wanted to see if there's a new proposal, and we asked for more additional information. I understand it's a burden to come to public meetings, but we think that that's the best way to get the information out there, is to have it presented to us at the same time it's presented to you. We're hearing this.
The burden isn't coming to meetings, the burden is having an argument about this subject that's causing us a lot of stress, just for the record.
I would be happy to use my legal training and my time to help the village. I do not want to spend more time opposing this parking lot. We have been doing it for 10 years. It is time to make a decision. It is not going to help Asterbach. The residents oppose it. There is no reason to continue to entertain design proposals. It is stressing us out beyond your wildest imaginations. We want peace. Please give us peace.
Hey. Mr. Reynolds?
I have one final comment. I've had a lot of interaction with the village because, we made renovations, we built a new house. And I remember in the old, on Beechwood Road, I wanted to change the windows from a regular window to a bay window. The amount of problems they gave me, they said it's going to change the character of Irvington. And this is a dead-end road. Beechwood Road is dead-end, as if the whole village would crumble if I changed it to a bay window. And then I gave a Porsche-like speech, and then just to get rid of me, they approved it. But after it was over, one of them came and said, you're making a terrible mistake. And this was for a window. That's how Irvington protected what it thought was important. Now we're talking about a parking lot. It's like that song. They pay, what was that?
Painted Over Paradise, the building parking lot. Thank you.
Yes. Was that Janet? I don't remember who it was.
Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell. That's what this reminds me of. This is our time to not follow that route and to do what's right for Irvington and to preserve its nature. That's why we all moved here. That's why we love it. If you can fight me over a window, why wouldn't we fight you over a parking lot, Okay, thank you.
I have one last very quick comment. I'm sorry.
All right. This will be the final word.
Final word. I just want you to know you can expect more opposition. This is a very public discussion now, and we have many new voices, thankfully. It is not just about the 12 adjacent property owners. This is about the entire village of Irvington. This is not just a small group of people anymore.
Great. We appreciate that. Thank you all very much. And we'll end the public comment on that. Review of action items, Larry? Oh, wait, sorry. We'll go back to the reports of board, standing committees, and officers. Trustee liaison reports. Mark?
Just to make a short comment, I just wanted to say that the first sample tree well was installed in front of the old Toronto lobby. And the cherry tree and the new...
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Am I talking too far from the mic?
Try that.
Okay, so anyways, I don't think both have done it, but the first tree well was put in front of the old Tra-La-La building, and it's got the metal grates and it's got a cherry tree, and they did all the work on the soil and blah, blah, blah. So there's supposed to be 2 of those that the DPW is doing this season, just to try out to get familiar with using those new grates. So the grates look great, and they're looking at the situation.
Excuse me, could you guys take this conversation outside? Thank you.
Yeah, so as I said, the grates look great.
Okay, thank you.
The other one's in front of Squint.
Did that go in?
Yes, they're both in.
Okay, I didn't hear that, but okay, that's good. And that's about all I have right now.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone who helped make Thanksgiving 2017 a special time in Irvington. Over 100 seniors attended the O'Hara lunch on November 21st. On Thanksgiving Day, over 70 volunteers were part of preparing and delivering over 120 meals. Thanks to all who donated, including the Curdock Adams Charitable Fund. An unsung family that helps every year is the Dorigos. who donated enough fruit to deliver 75 fruit baskets to seniors, and still had enough left over to send fruit to the homes for Thanksgiving Day. Plans for the 2017 holiday basket programs for seniors are underway. We're looking for donations to help with that event. I just wanted to list a couple of IASC events and programming. The Prescription Drug Take-Back Day was conducted on December 2nd at the Police Department. The next take-back is on January 20th. IASC will be sponsoring the Coalition Coordinator and IHS Health Teacher for the upcoming Student Assistance Service training. The social hosting postcard campaign will begin this month with the first postcard arriving on December 8th, and more postcards will be mailed every 2 weeks. Social hosting, just so you know, is not as social as it sounds. It's discouraging parents from hosting parties for their children at their homes. The holiday happening and tree lighting happened on Saturday. A special thanks to the Irvington PTSA, police and fire departments. And last of all, the beautification committee did a tremendous job. Many members worked all 5 days last week, making sure everything got done. A big shout out to Ann Myers and Rita Milo and their team. Also thanks to Morvito Electric, Care of Trees, and the rec staff.
Larry, you did mean to discourage certain types of parties at their homes, right? I mean,
Right.
Yeah, not all parties.
Yes, parties including alcohol.
And, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's it.
I don't know how the theater turned out on the weekend, your
Yeah,
event?
we had just under 200 people, which I thought was pretty good. Yeah, we had a great time. We raised some money, and we fought doing the final totaling, but we had a great time. It was really fun.
I'm sure Peter Pan went on all right?
Yes, Peter Pan went before and after us.
Okay, we met with with the Historic District Committee today, we'll be hearing about that. There was information from the Water Department and the Highway Department, but pretty much we've heard about that through other reports. But there is a note from the DPW about there's a high volume of leaf bagging this year, so they may not be picked up as quickly. I would note, unless something has changed, that the bags must still be those brown required bags, right? Not any old bags, not plastic bags.
Biodegradable.
Right, the biodegradable. So I've
Right.
seen some people with other bags waiting on the street, and no wonder they're not picked up. They have to be in the biodegradable bags, as an aside. That's it.
I think one observation I had another, concur with that. I think there's a very much higher level of bagging on the street and some mulching to the back of dump trucks and taken away.
Yeah.
I think a much higher percentage that I've seen. I just was thinking to myself that the whole leaf mulching wave has sort of begun to recede because I believe there's not enough, again, public outreach and education, and so, we need to figure that out a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen on its own unless people are reminded that there's a viable option.
So there are new people who don't even necessarily know that the bags have to be biodegradable. So obviously there are people that haven't been reached on the whole message of what you do with leaves. So I don't
Wasn't
know.
that a Green Policy Task Force initiative to begin with? The love them and leave them?
Yes, there hasn't been any educational
Yeah.
outreach for a number of years.
Right, so no, some people are not as aware as they were a couple of years ago. Anyway, that's the end of my report.
Okay, fire department, Brian read the fire department report about what happened on Thanksgiving Day, but in addition, in November, Irvington volunteer firefighters responded to 36 calls, and that's 355 total as of November 30th. I won't repeat about Thanksgiving afternoon, but I did notice in the names you read that 3 of them were the same last names. That must have really had a pretty sad...
That was an empty table.
Pretty sad effect on that.
Gotta keep the
Thanksgiving
turkey
table.
warm.
Department training on November 7th. It was a rainy Tuesday night. 20 firefighters practiced vehicle extrication using Jaws of Life on 2 junk cars donated by Brookfield Auto Wreckers. Thanks to Greg Nelson for letting us use the DPW garage to keep our training evolution warm and dry. Tuesday, November 21st, 16 Irvington firefighters performed interior firefighting operations at the County Training Center in Valhalla. This was the final session at the burn simulator. Maintenance roof replacement is underway. Firefighters looking forward to having a dry ceiling in the near future. Equipment and new boat lift has been installed at the Irvington Boat Club for Marine 4. The new lift travels at 40, I guess that's 40 knots per minute?
No, it's actually feet. It's actually how quickly it goes down, yeah.
Okay, 40 feet per minute compared to 20, because it's inches, it's the inches on.
Okay. I can't believe, what is it per minute? 40 inches per minute seems awful slow. It might be 40 inches a minute, actually. It's slow.
Okay, so it's
It's pretty
inches
slow.
per minute compared to 24 per minute of the
Yes.
old boat.
Really? It's faster.
It's faster.
I remember like going on calls and waiting for the boat. You're like, but,
It also has a 4,000-pound increased capacity for future boat requirements, and half the funding for the lift was provided with funding provided by State Assemblyman Tom Abenanti, so thank you to him. What he didn't put in here was something that happened on Friday that was really, really lovely. I took groups of children from the TRP program at Abbott House to visit the police department, the library, and the fire department. And the chief is a volunteer. Everybody welcomed these children, engaged with them. It was really a wonderful time. They were invited to all kinds of activities at the library. They had a showing of how to lock themselves in a jail cell and use a taser at the police department, but they got to dress up in firefighting equipment, and that was all.
What is TRP?
The temporary relocation program. These are for unaccompanied minors to get over the border, and they're here at Abbott
No,
House
I just
for
didn't know if it stood for,
particular periods
I
of
know,
time.
I know.
So we started with the girls, I'm going to do the boys this Friday, but it was an incredibly worthwhile experience for everybody, possibly mainly me. I mean, our
Appreciate you saying
people
that, too.
were terrific, and the kids really appreciated it.
I heard another group, Pam Mitchell took another group from that and did the same thing. So it's an established
Good. And they can use the library. That was the other thing that was made abundantly clear to them. The library's open to them. They can't take out books, but they can participate in all the programs. So thanks to everyone.
And that's it.
Okay.
Next is the village administrator's report.
Nothing tonight?
Village clerk treasurer report.
We had a kickoff meeting today with Logix. They're the software company we are engaging with to upgrade our water billing system and tax billing. So our goal is to have implementation of the taxes by June 1 and have the water prior to that. So it has started.
Water project when? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure, between now and June, so we do the water first and then the
Wicked
tax
serious,
deadline. The thing is that the tax have a real deadline, which is to get those bills out June 1. But we're working on getting things, the pre-conversion work prior to converting the data.
Village attorney's report.
Just briefly, new plans came in for the house on the property that the village sold at the end of Harmon's Road. It's before the planning board on Wednesday. The plans are available for anybody to see, but I would like to show them to the board and so you can see what's going there since your property surrounds it. You're the interested neighbor, so when we get a chance, we'll do that.
I don't believe there's any more public comment. Now review of action items, Larry.
I'll be posting the liaisons to the website, circulating the email with a list of liaisons to the Board of Trustees, and posting the most recent planning board memo, which is 2016, on the website for Esterbrook.
Is it worth putting somewhere, I don't know, about use biodegradable bags? I don't know if it would help, but maybe think about it.
They get stickered if they don't, right?
I know, but it takes so long to go through that process of stickering. It might.
Well, it is on, I think it's on the.
Yeah, I know. All right, forget it, it's all right.
And it's
I can
also
put it
on
in
the
that
back
mayor
of the
to
letter.
learn.
Yeah, right,
That's a
right,
good
good.
idea.
Do it that way. Okay.
So I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session regarding collective bargaining. Agreed?
Second.
Brenda?
All in favor?
I was bringing it in.